A 7¼ inch gauge Sweet William steam locomotive part 14, reprofiling a smokebox fitting so that the brass nut will fit smoothly, as the original nut had been severely over-tightened and damaged, like almost every other fixing on this model locomotive. It's January the 1st, 2023, so I'd like to wish all my viewers a Happy New Year. And now from my recording studio, it's back into the workshop. This is the fitting that I need to modify, because even though it looks okay, it's actually very distorted. The fitting I'm going to be working on was attached underneath the smokebox in this hole. I'll show you what I mean. All it is a guide for the blast pipe. When this was fitted by the builder, it was tightened so much that the end of it is distorted and follows the curve of the smokebox. What I'm going to do first of all is make a new nut. This is actually a large union nut, and I turned away quite a lot of the front of it. I've moved it into a position so I can turn away a bit more. Notice how I pushed the nut into the main chuck using the tailstock chuck. The main chuck was only tightened slightly initially, and after it was aligned in the chuck, I tightened it further. This is now no longer a union nut, and all I need to do is make it look better by using a chamfer tool. As you can see in this clip, the chamfer tool is very close to the chuck itself, and I'm using the rear part of the chamfer tool. And because this part of it hasn't been used much, it's very sharp and it cuts very cleanly. Before all the comments start, the thread on this fitting is not tapered, it's just a parallel thread that is damaged. The new modified union nut screws onto the fitting perfectly, but after this position it starts to get tight and feels uncomfortable, so I'm removing it. The first thing to do is to use some emery cloth to clean up the outside of the damaged threads. I know the part isn't running true in the chuck, it's very difficult to make it run true because the end flange is distorted. Now the nut screws on a little bit further, but it still feels very rough. And now it's top tip time, but first a serious health and safety warning. What you're about to see is a dangerous practice. I cannot recommend doing this, and I'm just using the video clip to show the way that I reprofiled the damaged thread using a small needle file. It is absolutely essential to run the lathe very slowly and in reverse, so that the needle file always moves away from the chuck. Pretty much like you see here. This is a 3-cornered file, and I just hold it against the work. In this clip you can clearly see the distortion of the end flange. This clip was taken to demonstrate the principle. Shortly after this, when I did the job for real, I moved the needle file back and forth as it was traversing the work. Because generally speaking, files do not cut very well in reverse, so I just helped it along a little bit. I made several passes, and then eventually the job was finished, and I took the part over to the workbench, and here I'm cleaning it up using a very stiff brush. And now the nut screws all the way down the thread, and it doesn't feel slack, it just feels good. The nut, that is. As you can see, I fitted an O-ring because I want this to seal against the smokebox. And as well as the O-ring that's going to seal against the smokebox on the inside, I'm using another smaller O-ring inside the union nut, which will make this blast pipe and fitting fully airtight when it's in the smokebox. Because I'm using O-rings, I won't have to over-tighten these nuts. I'll just use sufficient pressure to seal both of the O-rings in their respective places. Moving on now to the blast pipe itself. This screws into a T-piece between the cylinders. Here I'm cleaning it up a little bit, and you can see it's badly marked. It was originally fitted using a pair of grips. And when I removed it from the locomotive, I marked it even further by using a pair of grips to remove it. This is not a very good situation, but I have an idea. I found this fitting in my box of very old fittings. It's some sort of a nozzle, I don't know where it came from, it's just in a box of bits. I'm going to turn this into something that I can silver solder on the blast pipe. And in this clip I'm drilling it out using a 5/8 drill. And here I've turned the part round in the chuck to get rid of the nozzle part, which was a bit small and causing the drill to generate a lot of heat. In no time at all, using several facing cuts, I turned away the front part of it. As I was machining this piece of brass, I couldn't help but notice it was considerably harder than the stuff I normally use. But with a carbide tip tool, I soon removed the end of it. The current internal diameter of this part is now 5/8 of an inch, but that's too small to fit the blast pipe. As you can see, it's too tight. What I need to do now is bore out this hole using a boring tool until it fits the blast pipe. I didn't use any measuring equipment, I just took it easy and tried the blast pipe for size between cuts. I don't know what it is or why, but there's something soothing about watching a boring tool at work. In this close-up, it's obvious that I'm taking quite a fine cut now. And after this cut, the blast pipe was a nice smooth fit in the hole. All I need to do now is silver solder this nut somewhere on the pipe. Then when I reassemble it, I can use a spanner on the nut to tighten this blast pipe into the exhaust T-piece. And that is it for this episode. Once again, I'll wish you a happy new year. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.